Welcome to Final Curiosity. This episode takes us back to 1857 and recounts the tale of Moses Walker, deemed worthless by the slave trade, yet destined to become one of Louisiana's most feared and pursued figures. What follows is a weighty narrative of injustice, endurance, and an unexpected historical transformation. Pause for a moment. Take a breath and listen closely. If these stories are important to you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments the city and country you're listening from. Your engagement helps ensure these lives are remembered, not erased. Let's begin. In the summer of 1901, a Harvard University historian traveled to a small Ontario, Canada town, searching for a story that had become legend in the American South. He sought a man named Moses Walker. Instead, he found a grave in a quiet cemetery, a widow who still wept at her husband's name, and a tale so extraordinary he spent 3 years verifying it. The story he uncovered would never appear in official history books. It was too brutal, too unsettling, too dangerous for a nation still healing from slavery's wounds. But the historian wrote it down anyway, in a private journal, undiscovered until 1987 within the university library archives. This is that story. The story of a man born with a face so disfigured no one would buy him. A man who spent 32 years treated as less than human. A man who became the most wanted fugitive in Louisiana history, and a man who destroyed everyone who ever made him suffer. His name was Moses Walker, and what he did in 1857 still haunts the Louisiana Bayous today. Let me take you back to St. Landry Parish in the heart of Cajun country. The year was 1825, and a baby was born in a wooden shack behind Bellefontaine Plantation's sugar fields. The delivering midwife was Aunt Cora, a 60-year-old enslaved woman who had brought hundreds of children into the world. She thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. When the baby emerged, Aunt Cora screamed. She stumbled back, knocking over the water basin, nearly dropping the newborn. The other women rushed forward, thinking the birth had gone terribly wrong. Then they saw the baby's face, and they screamed too. The infant's left side was covered in a massive purple growth, from forehead to chin, engulfing his eye, distorting his features. His left eye was white and blank, like a marble pressed into raw meat. The skin was wrinkled and twisted, as if melted and reformed by some terrible fire. "Devil child," Aunt Cora whispered, backing away. That baby been marked by the devil himself. The mother, a young woman named Sarah who had labored for 16 hours, reached out with trembling hands. "Let me see him. Let me see my baby." They gave her the child. Sarah looked at her son's face for a long moment. The women waited for her to scream, to cry, to push him away in horror. Instead, she smiled. "He's beautiful," she said softly. "He's my beautiful boy." Sarah named him Moses, after the prophet who led his people from slavery. She believed God had a purpose for her son, that the mark was not a curse but a sign. Sarah died 3 days later from childbirth complications. She never saw her beautiful boy grow up. She never protected him from what was coming. Moses Walker entered the world alone, disfigured, and motherless. For the next 32 years, the world would make him pay for all three. Bellefontaine Plantation covered over 3,000 acres of prime Louisiana farmland, one of St. Landry Parish's largest sugar operations, producing over 2 million pounds annually. It was home to 612 enslaved people. The owner was Colonel Philip Bowman, 58 years old in 1857, third generation of his family to own Bellefontaine. Colonel Bowman was a shrewd businessman, a ruthless negotiator, and a respected member of Louisiana society. He served in the state legislature, donated generously to the Catholic Church, and hosted lavish parties. He was also, by any standard of human decency, a monster. Colonel Bowman collected things: fine wines, antique furniture, rare books. But his most prized collection was instruments of torture. His private study held over 40 devices. Thumb screws, branding irons, whips with metal tips, masks that forced the wearer's mouth open. He used them in a special basement room. The screams sometimes carried to the slave quarters. Bowman had a philosophy about slavery. He believed Africans were not fully human, their souls corrupted by heathen worship. He believed suffering could purify them. "I am not cruel," he would say. "I am merciful. I am giving them the gift of purification. They should thank me." A Moses Walker was his favorite subject. The boy's disfigured face fascinated the colonel, proof of his theories. Bowman tried to sell Moses 3 times, at ages 12, 18, and 25. Each time, buyers reacted with disgust or fear. No one bid. After the 3rd attempt, Bowman accepted Moses was unsellable. Since he couldn't profit from him, he decided to use him for entertainment. Moses was assigned the most degrading jobs, cleaning latrines, collecting corpses, but cleaning up after punishments. But that wasn't enough for Bowman. At dinner parties, Moses was ordered to serve, so his presence would create a reaction. "Behold," Madame Bowman would announce, or "little monster. I keep him as a curiosity." The guests would laugh. Moses stood motionless, his one good eye fixed on the floor, showing nothing. Madame Celine Bowman was in some ways crueler than her husband. His cruelty was cold and calculated, hers was personal. She enjoyed humiliating him. "My pet monster," she called him. She had rules. He couldn't look at white people directly. Couldn't speak unless spoken to. Couldn't eat until everyone else had finished. Had to bow whenever a Bowman passed. Violations brought creative punishments. Standing in the sun for hours, being locked in a box overnight, eating from a trough on hands and knees. But the worst torment came from Jacques Bowman, the colonel's only son. Jacques was 24 in 1857, the heir, skilled only in drinking, gambling, and inflicting pain. He discovered Moses at age 8, throwing a rock that split Moses's jaw. "You bleed red," he had said. "I thought monsters bled black." That began 16 years of torment. Throwing knives, pistol target practice, forcing Moses to dance as bullets flew at his feet. By age 32, Moses had endured more suffering than most could imagine. His body was covered in scars. His spirit was held together by pure will. He had seen the full horror of American slavery and survived, but survival was not living. He moved through his days like a ghost, waiting only for death. Then something changed. In spring 1851, a Catholic priest arrived in St. Landry Parish, Father Antoine Marchand, sent from New Orleans to minister to rural communities. Officially, he served white Catholic families. Unofficially, he was an abolitionist, a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Father Marchand noticed Moses immediately. While others saw a monster, he saw intelligence, a mind trapped behind that face, waiting. After Mass, he asked Moses a dangerous question. "Can you read?" Reading was forbidden for slaves. "No, Father," Moses said carefully. "I cannot read." "Would you like to learn?" Marchand asked. Thus began a secret education lasting 3 years. Late at night in an abandoned swamp-side cabin, Father Marchand taught Moses to read by candlelight, starting with the Bible. Within 6 months, Moses read fluently. Within a year, he read everything the priest could bring him. Histories, philosophy, law books memorizing Louisiana's slave statutes. "You have a remarkable mind," the priest told him. "In another life, you could have been a scholar, a leader." Moses replied, "In this life, I am property. Bodies can be owned," Marchand said. "Minds cannot. Your thoughts are your own." Their conversations shifted to something more dangerous. Marchand told Moses about the Underground Railroad, about Canada where slavery was illegal. Moses memorized routes, contacts, and codes. But Moses asked different questions too. About the Bowman's business, Louisiana politics, how power worked and could be destroyed. Father Marchand realized he wasn't just teaching a slave to read. He was arming a weapon. In fall 1854, a new slave arrived at Bellefontaine, Delilah, 25, strong with her own sorrow. Her husband and daughter had been sold away years before. The loss had nearly destroyed her. The first time Delilah saw Moses, she didn't look away. She simply looked at him, met his eyes, then went about her business. That simple act of ordinary humanity was so unusual Moses didn't know how to process it. They began talking cautiously, then more deeply. Delilah told Moses about her family. Moses told her about his life, his secret education, the plans forming in his mind. "What kind of plans?" Delilah asked. "Plans to make them pay," Moses said. Delilah didn't flinch. Instead, she touched his disfigured face. "Tell me," she said. And Moses did. They fell in love, a dangerous luxury for slaves. In January 1857, Delilah discovered she was pregnant. In slavery, a child was property, belonging to Colonel Bowman from its first breath. Moses held her as she trembled. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. "We are going to leave," Moses said. "We are going to escape and take our child to freedom." "How?" "Your face. They'll recognize you anywhere." Moses smiled. "Let me worry about my face. We leave in October during Madame Bowman's birthday celebration. The whole plantation will be distracted. By the time they realize we're gone, it will be too late." "Too late for what?" Moses's smile faded. Too late to save themselves. The months leading to October 1857 were the busiest of Moses's life. By day, he performed his degrading duties. By night, he prepared. First money, he stole tiny amounts, accumulating nearly 200 in cash and valuables. Second, information. He memorized every overseer's schedule, guard habit, and building layout. Third, weapons. He fashioned a blade from scrap metal and smoke bombs from chemicals. Fourth, documents. He stole and copied evidence of Bowman's crimes. Illegal dealings, bribes, and most damning, proof of a conspiracy to assassinate a state legislator proposing slave treatment reforms. Fifth, revenge. He planned to make the Bowmans pay for everything. October 17, 1857 arrived clear and cool. Madame Bowman's 50th birthday party was the social event of the season. Moses watched the preparations from the shadows. At 8 p.m., the party was in full swing. At 9 p.m., Moses slipped away unnoticed. He met Delilah at their cabin. "It is time," he said. "Go to the edge of the swamp. Wait for me. I will come within the hour." "What are you going to do?" Delilah asked. Moses kissed her forehead. "I am going to make sure no one follows us." He turned back toward the mansion. It was time to settle accounts. First, Colonel Bowman's study. Moses picked the desk lock, took incriminating documents, and scattered the rest. He opened the safe using the combination he'd memorized, E82347. Bowman's mother's birth date, taking cash, jewelry, and more documents. Second, the wine cellar. He opened taps on barrels of brandy and whiskey, letting alcohol pour onto the stone floor, both destroying valuable spirits and creating fuel. Third, the stable. He opened every stall and cut every rope. The horses would run when startled, removing the fastest means of pursuit. Fourth, Jack's Bowman's bedroom. Jack's drunk was sprawled on his bed. Moses stood over him, remembering years of torment. Then he took a pillow and pressed it over Jack's face until the struggle ceased. "You wanted to see how monsters bleed," Moses said quietly. "Now you know how they kill." He arranged the scene to look like alcohol poisoning. Fifth, the kitchen. He arranged kindling near flour sacks, lit a candle positioned to ignite it in about an hour, then left. Moses Walker left Bellefontaine Plantation for the last time, just before 10 p.m. Behind him, a celebration continued, unaware. Ahead, Delilah waited. Within hours, the Bowmans would discover what the monster they tormented for 32 years could do. The fire started shortly after 11 p.m. By midnight, half the mansion was in flames. Then the fire reached the wine cellar. The alcohol fumes ignited in a massive explosion. Colonel Bowman watched his ancestral home burn. Madame Bowman screamed for Jacques. His body was found later, declared dead from alcohol poisoning. A tragic coincidence. Not until morning did they notice Moses and Delilah were missing. Bowman stood in his ruined study amid scattered papers and realized sabotage, revenge. "Find them," he ordered. "I want them alive. I want them to suffer." He posted a 10,000 reward, the largest bounty ever for a fugitive slave in Louisiana. Slave catchers, bounty hunters, and militias descended. The largest manhunt in Louisiana history had begun. Moses and Delilah traveled through swamps for 3 days, hiding by day, moving by night. By the 4th day, they reached a hidden community of free Creoles deep in the bayou, led by an old man called Papa Legba. Moses paid him 50 to hide Delilah. Returned from where? Delilah asked when Moses said he had to go back. "They will kill you. They will not find me." Moses said, "The Conal is still alive. As long as they breathe, they will hunt us. I am going to destroy them. Then I will come back for you. Promise me." Delilah said. Moses kissed her. "I promise." Moses knew his face was his greatest weakness. The posters described him unmistakably. So he decided to change it. After watching slave catchers pass, a thought took root. What if he became the predator? 3 days later, he set a trap on a narrow swamp path. He killed 3 slave catchers, took the youngest clothes, weapons, and money. Then, using his blade, he did the unthinkable. He removed the dead man's face, preserving it with salt, fashioning straps to hold it as a mask. When he put it on, with the hat pulled low, he looked like any other white man traveling the roads. The monster had become invisible. Over the next 3 months, Moses systematically destroyed the Bowman family. He anonymously sent the stolen documents to newspapers. The story exploded. Prominent planter implicated in murder plot. Colonel Bowman was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Madame Bowman tried to maintain the plantation, but Moses funded sabotage, field fires, broken equipment, orchestrated escapes. Within 6 months, Bellefontaine was bankrupt. In August 1858, she was forced to sell. She moved to a small New Orleans apartment, a broken shadow of her former self. But Moses wasn't satisfied. They were still alive. He visited Colonel Bowman in the Louisiana State Penitentiary chapel, bribing guards for privacy. When he removed his mask, Bowman stared in shock. It was you. All of it. Yes, Moses said. Everything you lost came from me. He told Bowman, you thought I was worthless, but I destroyed you. I killed your son. I want you to spend every day thinking how the monster no one wanted brought down everything you built. He continued, your wife is still alive. I let her live. Every day, she will wonder when I am coming. She will never know peace. That is my gift to her. Then he walked out, disappearing into the crowd. Moses returned to Delilah. It is over now. We are leaving for Canada. Father Marchand had arranged a ship from New Orleans. In November 1858, they crossed into Canada. Moses breathed free air for the first time. 3 weeks later, in Buxton, Ontario, Delilah gave birth to a healthy girl. They named her Hope. She was born free. The years that followed were Moses's happiest. He worked as a blacksmith. Delilah opened a bakery. Hope grew up free, attending school, playing with friends. Father Marchand visited in 1860, saying, I always knew you were special. He died the next year, buried in Buxton. Moses visited his grave every Sunday. Moses followed the Civil War. When the Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863, he wept for those still in bondage and those who hadn't survived. Colonel Bowman died in prison in 1864. Madame Bowman died in a New Orleans charity hospital in 1871, paranoid and alone. Moses Walker died on September 3, 1901, at 76, surrounded by family. Before his death, he told his story. I am not proud of everything I did. He told his grandson Samuel. But they needed to know. They needed to know we could think and plan and fight back. I wanted them to fear us, to see not property but enemies. He was buried in Buxton Cemetery. His tombstone reads Moses Walker, 1825–1901. I was not a monster. I was a man. His story was never in official history books. Too dangerous, too unsettling. But the truth survived in whispered legends. Moses Walker proved that slavery, for all its power, was fragile. It depended on believing the enslaved were less than human. Moses shattered that belief. The slave too ugly to sell became the most wanted man in Louisiana. The monster no one wanted became the architect of his oppressor's destruction. He revealed that every human being has inherent worth and dignity, that no system of oppression can survive forever when the oppressed decide to fight back. Moses Walker was not a monster. He was a man, and he proved it in ways the Bowman family never forgot. This is his story. A story that haunts the Louisiana Bayous to this day. A story that deserves to be remembered. He was considered too ugly to sell. Treated worse than an animal for 32 years. Told he was worthless, a burden, a joke. And he burned them all, not with fire alone, but with the unstoppable force of a human mind that refused to be broken. A mind that turned weakness into strength, invisibility into power, suffering into fuel for transformation. Moses Walker won against all odds, against the entire system of American slavery, against everything that tried to destroy him. He won.